The bitter wind howled through the narrow alleyway, sweeping discarded newspapers and empty coffee cups into small whirlwinds as darkness settled over the city. Bruno, a massive Rottweiler with a glossy black coat and intelligent amber eyes, trotted purposefully through the trash-strewn passage, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his thick fur. Unlike most strays, there was something regal about his bearing, a quiet dignity that belied his circumstances. Bruno paused, his ears perking forward at a sound so faint it was nearly lost in the city's nocturnal symphony. A whimper, high-pitched and weak, definitely not from another dog or a cat. His head tilted, nostrils flaring as he detected a scent that seemed out of place in the gritty alley. The clean, sweet smell of baby powder. The Rottweiler moved cautiously toward a collection of cardboard boxes piled against the brick wall of what had once been a bakery. The sound came again, more insistent this time. Bruno nudged aside a soggy piece of cardboard with his muzzle, revealing a carefully wrapped bundle tucked inside a worn wicker basket. The tiny face that peered out was flushed pink from the cold, lips trembling and beginning to take on a bluish tint. Bruno didn't hesitate. He lowered his massive body beside the basket, pressing his warm bulk against it to shield the infant from the cutting wind. His instincts, honed by years on the street, told him this small human wouldn't survive the night's plummeting temperatures without help. Across the street in her modest apartment above Amelia's flower shop, Nora Fletcher was struggling with writer's block. Her latest article for the local newspaper was due tomorrow, and she had yet to find an angle that would capture readers' attention. The piece was supposed to highlight community heroes, but all her interviews had yielded were the usual suspects: firefighters, teachers, and community organizers. Worthy, certainly, but not the fresh perspective her editor demanded. Nora sighed, pushing away from her laptop and moving to the window. Sometimes watching the city at night helped clear her mind. The alleyway across from her building was visible from her perch, illuminated by the flickering glow of a street lamp. That's when she noticed the dark shape moving among the boxes. At first, she assumed it was just another stray searching for food scraps, but something about the animal's behavior seemed odd. Instead of rummaging through the garbage, it appeared to be settling down, curling protectively around something. Curious, Nora grabbed her coat and camera. As a local journalist, she'd learned to follow her instincts when something seemed out of the ordinary. The night was colder than she'd anticipated, her breath forming clouds in the frosty air as she crossed the empty street. As she approached the alley, Bruno raised his head, eyes glinting in the dim light. Nora froze. A Rottweiler, and not a small one. Her heart hammered in her chest as she assessed her options, cursing her impulsive decision to investigate. "Hey there, big guy," she called softly, keeping her voice calm despite her fear. "What have you got there?" To her surprise, the dog didn't growl or bark. Instead, he shifted slightly, as if deliberately revealing what he was guarding. The movement exposed the edge of the basket, and a tiny hand reached up from within the blankets. "Oh my God!" Nora gasped, all fear forgotten as she rushed forward. The Rottweiler moved aside, watching intently as she knelt beside the basket. The baby couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, swaddled in a soft yellow blanket that did little to protect against the winter chill. A small envelope was tucked beside the infant, "Please help," written across it in hasty, desperate handwriting. Nora quickly unwrapped her scarf and tucked it around the tiny body, her mind racing. She needed to get the baby warm immediately. As she lifted the basket, the Rottweiler rose to his feet, his attention fixed on the infant. "I'm taking the baby somewhere safe," she told him, unsure why she felt the need to explain herself to a stray dog. "You did good, boy." To her astonishment, Bruno followed as she hurried back across the street to her apartment. He stayed close, his protective demeanor making it clear he had no intention of abandoning his charge. Nora should have been worried about letting a stray animal into her home, but there was something about this dog that inspired trust rather than fear. Once inside, Nora cranked up the heat and called emergency services, carefully cradling the baby against her chest to share her body warmth. The dispatcher promised an ambulance would arrive shortly and instructed her on how to keep the infant warm and check for signs of hypothermia. Bruno settled on the floor nearby, eyes never leaving the baby. Only when the infant's color improved and the tiny hands began to move more vigorously, did the tension in the dog's powerful body seem to ease. While waiting for the ambulance, Nora carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on tear-stained paper. "I can't give my daughter what she deserves. Please find someone who can love her properly. Her name is Lily. I'm so sorry. I just can't keep running anymore." The note was unsigned, offering no clues about the mother's identity or circumstances. Nora's journalistic instincts kicked in, her mind filling with questions. What could drive a mother to abandon her child on such a cold night? Who was she running from? And why leave the baby in that particular alley? The wail of approaching sirens interrupted her thoughts. Bruno immediately stood at attention, a low rumble in his throat. "It's okay," Nora soothed. "They're here to help." The paramedics were professional and efficient, checking the baby's vital signs and preparing her for transport to the hospital. They were less enthusiastic about the large dog hovering protectively nearby. "Mom, you need to control that animal," one of them said nervously. "He's not actually mine," Nora explained. "He found the baby in the alley and was protecting her. That's how I noticed them." The paramedics exchanged skeptical glances, but were too focused on the infant to argue. As they prepared to leave, Bruno planted himself firmly by the door, his intention clear. "I think he wants to come," Nora said, surprising herself with the suggestion. "Hospital policy strictly prohibits animals in the ambulance or the facility," the lead paramedic replied firmly. Nora nodded in understanding, but couldn't help feeling a pang of sympathy for Bruno. "I'll make sure he's taken care of," she promised, though she had no idea how she would accomplish that. As the ambulance pulled away, Bruno stood beside Nora on the sidewalk, both of them watching until the flashing lights disappeared around a corner. The Rottweiler turned his gaze to her, and in those expressive amber eyes, Nora saw something that resonated with her own feelings, concern, and a strange sense of responsibility for the abandoned child. "Well, I guess we're in this together now," she told him, reaching hesitantly to pat his massive head. He allowed the touch, leaning slightly into her hand. "Let's see if we can figure out what happened to little Lily's mother." With that decision, Nora had no way of knowing she had just stepped into a mystery far more complex and dangerous than any story she had ever pursued, one that would challenge her understanding of courage, connection, and the extraordinary lengths to which some would go to protect those they loved. Detective James Parker hated hospital cases. The antiseptic smell, the harsh fluorescent lighting, the squeaking of rubber-soled shoes on polished floors, all of it set his teeth on edge. But abandoned babies required immediate police involvement, so here he was, standing in the pediatric ward at 3 a.m, staring through a glass window at a tiny infant who had narrowly escaped freezing to death. "She's stabilized nicely," Dr. Evelyn Chen informed him, consulting the chart in her hands. "No signs of frostbite or serious hypothermia. Whoever wrapped her up knew what they were doing. The blanket is high quality and she was dressed in several layers." "So not the act of someone who didn't care about the baby's welfare," James mused. "I would say quite the opposite. Someone cared very much but felt they had no other option." Dr. Chen's expression softened as she looked at the sleeping infant. "From what happens to her now?" "Social services will place her in emergency foster care once she's released. Then the system takes over while we try to locate the mother." His tone made it clear how often such searches proved fruitless. As they spoke, the elevator doors opened and Nora stepped out, looking slightly disheveled but determined. James raised an eyebrow at her appearance, particularly the dog hair clinging to her coat. "Ms. Fletcher, I presume?" he asked, recognizing her from her byline photo in the local paper. "You're the one who found the baby?" "Yes, though technically he found her first," Nora replied, extending her hand. "And please, call me Nora." As they shook hands, James noticed the notepad tucked under her arm. "I hope you're not planning to write about this. Cases involving abandoned children are sensitive." "I'm not here as a journalist," Nora assured him, though the statement wasn't entirely true. "I just wanted to check on Lily and give you this." She handed him the envelope with the note. "I found it in the basket with her." James examined the envelope and note carefully, placing them in an evidence bag. "Lily, the mother named her?" Nora nodded, pointing to the note. It's in there. Not much else to go on, though. We'll run tests, check missing persons reports, canvass the area, James said, reciting standard procedure. But without more information, I might be able to help with that, Nora offered. The alley where she was left is directly across from my apartment. It's not a random location. It's sheltered from the main street, but still relatively safe. Someone chose it specifically. James studied her with newfound interest. She was observant. He'd give her that. And you think you can find out why? I have contacts in the neighborhood. People talk to me. She didn't mention that many of those contacts were the very homeless individuals that James's colleagues often overlooked or hassled. This isn't a story for you to chase, Miss Fletcher. It's a potential criminal investigation. Why not both? Nora challenged. We want the same thing, to find out who left Lily and why. I can go places and ask questions that might be difficult for an official police investigation. Before James could respond, a nurse approached them. Excuse me, but there's a situation outside that you should probably address. There's a large dog that won't leave the hospital entrance. Security is threatening to call animal control. Nora's eyes widened. Bruno? I left him tied up outside my apartment building. He must have broken free. Bruno? James questioned. The Rottweiler who found Lily. He's been extraordinarily protective of her. James sighed heavily. Of course there's a Rottweiler involved in this case. Why wouldn't there be? The three of them headed downstairs to find a standoff in progress. Bruno sat calmly in front of the main doors, ignoring the security guard who was keeping a safe distance while speaking urgently into his radio. Several patients and visitors were giving the large dog a wide berth. That's your dog? James asked skeptically. He's not exactly mine, Nora admitted, but he seems to have adopted me, or rather, he's adopted Lily and is tolerating me by association. Great. A stray Rottweiler with an attachment to an abandoned baby. This case just keeps getting better. Despite his sarcasm, James approached Bruno with cautious respect. The dog watched him intently but made no aggressive moves. James had worked with K9 units enough to recognize a well-trained animal when he saw one. This was no ordinary stray. He's wearing a collar but no tags, James observed, crouching to get a better look. Probably removed deliberately. You think he was abandoned too? Nora asked. Or he escaped? Either way, he's clearly had training. James stood up, making a decision he would probably regret. Take him home for now. Tomorrow, bring him to the station. We'll scan him for a microchip and see if he can lead us back to where he found the baby. Sometimes animals remember details that humans miss. Nora nodded, relieved she wouldn't have to fight to keep Bruno from animal control. And Lily? I'll keep you updated on her condition, Dr. Chen promised, but only because you found her, not for a news story. Fair enough, Nora agreed, though her mind was already cataloguing angles for the powerful narrative taking shape. A loyal dog, an abandoned baby, and the mystery of a mother on the run. But as she led Bruno away from the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this story, something darker lurking beneath the surface. Later that night, as Nora settled on her couch with Bruno sprawled across her feet like he'd lived there forever, she reviewed the photos she'd taken in the alley. Most showed the basket and the surrounding area, but one captured something she hadn't noticed at the time, a small object glinting in the shadows behind where the basket had been found. She zoomed in, enhancing the image as much as her software allowed. It appeared to be a pendant on a broken chain, half buried in the grime of the alley floor. Heart racing, Nora glanced at the clock. Too late to go back now, but first thing tomorrow she'd return to search for it. As if reading her thoughts, Bruno lifted his head, his amber eyes meeting hers with an intelligence that was almost unnerving. You know more than you're letting on, don't you? She murmured, scratching behind his ears. Don't worry. We'll find out what happened to Lily's mum, I promise. Bruno sighed contentedly and rested his massive head on her lap, but his eyes remained alert, watchful. Outside, the wind continued to howl, carrying with it the secrets of a desperate mother and the faint echo of footsteps retreating into the night, footsteps that might have left behind more than just a baby in a basket. Dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Nora was already back in the alley, Bruno at her side. The massive Rottweiler seemed to understand their mission, methodically sniffing the area where the basket had been found. "It should be right around here," Nora muttered, comparing her surroundings to the photo on her phone. Bruno suddenly stopped, paw raised delicately above a patch of grimy concrete. Nora knelt beside him, using a pen to carefully sift through the debris. There it was, a silver pendant in the shape of a small key hanging from a broken chain. "Good boy," she praised, carefully picking up the necklace with a tissue. The pendant was tarnished but beautiful, with intricate engravings along its surface and a tiny blue stone set in the bow. As she examined it, Bruno's head snapped up, his posture suddenly alert. A moment later, Nora heard footsteps approaching from the street end of the alley. She quickly pocketed the pendant and stood. A woman appeared, elegant in an expensive wool coat, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon. She looked entirely out of place in the dingy alleyway. Bruno's reaction was immediate and alarming. A low growl rumbled in his chest, his body tensing. "Can I help you?" Nora asked, placing a calming hand on Bruno's collar. The woman studied them with cold blue eyes. "I'm looking for my dog," she said smoothly. "I was told a Rottweiler was seen in this area." Bruno's growl deepened. Nora had never seen him react this way to anyone. "Sorry, this one's with me," Nora replied carefully. "Have you checked with animal control?" The woman's gaze lingered on Bruno, who had positioned himself between Nora and the stranger. "Perhaps I was mistaken," she said finally, "though he does look remarkably like mine, a pedigree animal, quite valuable." She extended her hand slowly toward Bruno, who backed away, still growling. "He doesn't seem to know you," Nora observed. "Animals can be so fickle," the woman replied, withdrawing her hand. She reached into her purse and produced a business card. "Veronica Hayes. If you hear of any Rottweilers being found, I'd appreciate a call." Nora accepted the card, noting the embossed logo for Hayes Security Solutions. "I'll keep that in mind." With a tight smile, Veronica turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement. Bruno's posture remained rigid until she disappeared from view. "You really don't like her, do you?" Nora murmured. Bruno's only response was to nudge her hand as if urging her to leave the alley. At the police station, Detective Parker was waiting for them, a cup of coffee in one hand and a case file in the other. "You're late," he greeted them. "We made a detour," Nora explained, showing him the pendant. "Found this where Lily was abandoned." James examined the necklace with interest. "Could belong to the mother. Good find." He led them to a small room where a technician waited to scan Bruno for a microchip. The dog submitted to the procedure with dignified patience. "Got something," the technician announced. "Chip number coming up now. Registered to Hayes Security Solutions." Nora's blood ran cold. Hayes Security. A woman named Veronica Hayes just approached me in the alley looking for a Rottweiler. James's expression hardened. Hayes Security provides guard dogs to high-end clients. They're also contracted by several women's shelters for security services. "Women's shelters?" Nora repeated, her journalist's instincts flaring. Lily's mother mentioned running in her note. "Could be a coincidence," James cautioned, but his tone suggested he didn't believe that any more than she did. "What if Lily's mother was staying at one of these shelters?" Nora proposed. "What if she was running from someone dangerous?" James nodded slowly. "It's a lead worth following. I'll make some calls." "And what about Bruno?" Nora asked, suddenly concerned for the dog who had appointed himself Lily's guardian. "Technically, he belongs to Hayes Security," James admitted, "but let's hold off on contacting them until we understand what's going on here." Back at Nora's apartment, she examined the pendant more closely. Under better light, she could see that the engravings weren't decorative but formed tiny words, "To protect what matters most." She also discovered that the key actually worked. The blue stone turned slightly, revealing a hidden compartment inside the bow. Empty. Her phone rang, startling her. It was Dr. Chen from the hospital. "Lily's being discharged tomorrow," the doctor informed her. "Social Services has found a temporary placement." "That's good news," Nora said, though she felt an unexpected pang at the thought of the baby leaving the hospital. "Has there been any progress identifying her mother?" "That's actually why I'm calling," Dr. Chen replied, her voice lowering. "A woman came by the hospital today asking about recent baby admissions. She claimed to be from social services, but her ID didn't check out. Security escorted her out." "What did she look like?" Nora asked, already suspecting the answer. "Blonde, expensively dressed, called herself Victoria something." "Veronica Hayes," Nora corrected grimly. "You know her?" "We're getting acquainted." Nora glanced at Bruno, who was sitting alertly by the window, watching the street below. "Doctor, can you make sure Lily has extra security until she's placed?" After ending the call, Nora contacted James with the new information. His response was immediate and concerning. "Stay where you are, don't open the door for anyone but me, I'm on my way." While waiting, Nora researched Hayes Security Solutions. The company provided executive protection, security systems, and, most interestingly, discreet personal recovery services. Their client list was impressive, including corporations, celebrities, and wealthy individuals. Bruno suddenly leapt up, barking sharply at the window. Nora peered out to see a black SUV parked across the street, a figure watching her building from the driver's seat. Her doorbell rang, making her jump. Bruno raced to the door, barking fiercely. Through the peephole, Nora saw a man in a delivery uniform holding a package. "Delivery for Fletcher," he called through the door. Something felt wrong. She hadn't ordered anything. "Leave it by the door, please." "Need a signature," the man insisted. Bruno's barking intensified. Trusting the dog's instincts, Nora backed away from the door. "Slide the form under the door, then." Instead of responding, she heard retreating footsteps. When she checked the peephole again, the hallway was empty. No delivery man, no package. Nora called James, her hands shaking slightly. "Someone just tried to get me to open my door. Bruno scared them off." "I'm 5 minutes out," James assured her. "Bolt your door and stay away from the windows." When James arrived, accompanied by a female officer, he checked the hallway thoroughly before explaining what they'd learned. "Hayes Security has connections to a man named Harold Bennett," he began. "Bennett is wealthy, powerful, and currently going through a messy divorce. His wife Grace disappeared with their infant daughter about 2 weeks ago." "You think Lily is Bennett's daughter?" Nora asked, the pieces beginning to fit together. "It's possible. Bennett reported them missing, claiming Grace was mentally unstable and had kidnapped their child. But Grace's sister tells a different story, says Bennett was abusive, and Grace fled for their safety." "And Hayes Security works for Bennett," Nora concluded. "They're his personal security firm," James confirmed. "We think they've been tracking Grace, and somehow Bruno was involved." The Rottweiler's ears perked up at the mention of Grace, his tail wagging slightly. "He recognizes that name," Nora observed. "Bruno knew Grace." "The question is, where is she now?" James said grimly. "If she abandoned Lily, something must have gone very wrong." As if in answer to his question, Bruno began pawing at Nora's bag where she had placed the pendant. She removed it, holding it up. "I found a hidden compartment in this, but it was empty," she told James. The detective examined it closely. "Not entirely empty," he said, using his pocket knife to carefully pry at the interior. A tiny micro SD card slipped out into his palm. Grace left evidence, Nora realized, but she got spooked and had to leave Lily behind to protect her. "And she left Bruno to guard her," James added, glancing at the Rottweiler with newfound respect. "These trained dogs are absolutely loyal. He wouldn't have left Lily alone unless ordered to find help." "Which he did," Nora said, scratching Bruno behind the ears. "He found me." As they pondered their next move, Nora's phone rang again. The hospital. Dr. Chen's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Someone just tried to take Lily," she reported. "A nurse we've never seen before. When security responded, she fled." James was already moving toward the door. "We need to get to the hospital, now." "What about Bruno?" Nora asked, unwilling to leave the dog behind. "Bring him," James decided. "If Bennett's people make another attempt, we might need his help." As they raced to the hospital, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. Grace had gone to extraordinary lengths to protect her daughter, leaving behind both physical evidence and her trusted guard dog. She wouldn't have abandoned Lily without ensuring some way to reclaim her once the danger had passed. The pendant weighed heavily in Nora's pocket, to protect what matters most. The words seemed to hold a deeper meaning now, perhaps even a clue to where Grace might be hiding, and why she believed her only option was to leave her beloved daughter in the cold with only a loyal Rottweiler to watch over her. The hospital corridor was in chaos when they arrived. Security guards clustered around the pediatric ward, and Dr. Chen met them at the entrance, her face tight with worry. "Lily's safe," she assured them immediately. "We've moved her to a secure room with an officer guarding the door." "Tell me exactly what happened," James demanded as they hurried through the halls. "A woman in nursing scrubs tried to take Lily during shift change. When questioned, she claimed to be from the NICU, but we don't rotate staff that way. When security approached, she ran." "Security cameras?" James asked. "Already checking." She kept her face hidden, wore a surgical mask. They reached the secure room where Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the drama surrounding her. Bruno immediately padded to the crib, resting his massive head on the edge to watch over her. The sight brought unexpected tears to Nora's eyes. "We need to see what's on that micro SD card," she said, turning to James. The detective inserted the tiny card into his department-issued tablet. The video file appeared, a woman's face filling the screen. She was beautiful but exhausted, dark circles under her green eyes, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "If you're watching this, I didn't make it back to Lily," she began, her voice cracking. "My name is Grace Bennett. My husband Harold is trying to find us. He's—" She paused, taking a shuddering breath. "Harold is dangerous. I have proof of his crimes on this card, financial records, threatening messages, and evidence of his connections to organized crime." Bruno whined softly at the sound of Grace's voice, his tail wagging slightly. "I thought I could escape with Lily, but Harold's people found the shelter where we were hiding. I'm leaving Lily somewhere safe with Bruno to protect her while I lead them away. If I don't return in 24 hours, Bruno knows to find help." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Whoever found my daughter, please protect her until my sister Rachel can come for her. Rachel lives in Cedar Grove at 1255 Maple Street. She'll recognize the pendant. It was our mother's." The video ended with Grace's tearful face frozen on the screen. "Cedar Grove is only an hour away," Nora said, looking at the timestamp on the video. "This was recorded yesterday morning before she left Lily." "We need to find Rachel immediately," James agreed, already dialing the station to request assistance. Dr. Chen checked her watch. "Lily's temporary foster placement is expecting to pick her up in 2 hours. Cancel it," James ordered. "Tell them there's been a complication. No one takes that baby until we verify Rachel's identity and get to the bottom of this." While James coordinated with Cedar Grove police, Nora re-watched the video, looking for any clues to Grace's current whereabouts. Bruno remained fixed at Lily's side, his protective instincts unwavering. "Wait," Nora said suddenly, pausing the video at a specific frame. "Look at the background." James leaned in, studying the image. Behind Grace was a window with a partial view of a distinctive red neon sign. "The Paradise Motel," he recognized immediately. "It's on the edge of town, near the highway." A plan quickly formed. James would check the motel, while officers brought Rachel from Cedar Grove to the hospital. Nora would stay with Lily and Bruno, under police protection. "I'm coming with you," Nora insisted when James prepared to leave. "Absolutely not," he refused. "This isn't a story, Nora. Bennett's people are dangerous." "I'm not thinking about a story," she argued. "But Grace trusted Bruno to find help, and that help was me. She might trust me more than a police officer she doesn't know." James wanted to refuse, but time was critical. "Fine, but you stay in the car unless I say otherwise." Before leaving, Nora knelt beside Bruno. "We're going to find Grace," she told him, looking into his intelligent eyes. "For you stay here and protect Lily." Bruno seemed to understand, settling more firmly by the crib as Dr. Chen promised to stay in the room until they returned. The Paradise Motel was exactly as seedy as its name suggested, a single-story row of rooms with peeling paint and flickering vacancy sign. James approached the manager, flashing his badge. The man's initial reluctance vanished at the sight of official ID. "Blonde woman? Checked in yesterday? Probably paid cash?" James asked. The manager nodded. "Room 7, paid for 2 nights. Haven't seen her come or go since yesterday afternoon." James drew his weapon as they approached room 7, motioning for Nora to stay behind him. He knocked firmly. "Police, open up." Silence. He knocked again, then tried the handle. Locked. "Stand back," he instructed Nora, before kicking the door open in one powerful movement. The room was empty, but showed signs of recent occupation. Rumpled bed, bathroom towels used. On the small table by the window lay a phone and a bus ticket to a town 3 hours north departing that evening. She was planning to keep running, Nora observed. A noise outside caught their attention, a car door slamming shut. James moved to the window, carefully peering out. A black SUV had parked 2 spaces down, and a familiar figure emerged. "Veronica Hayes," he muttered. "How did she find this place?" Grace must be tracked somehow, Nora realized. "The pendant, maybe?" They watched as Veronica approached room 9, knocking confidently. When no one answered, she produced a key card, unlocking the door and slipping inside. "We need to move," James said urgently. "If Hayes is here, Bennett's people can't be far behind." As they stepped outside, planning to circle around to room 9, a woman emerged from behind the ice machine, freezing when she saw them. It was Grace Bennett, looking even more exhausted than in her video, a baseball cap pulled low over her face. Her eyes darted between them, clearly ready to run, until Nora spoke. "Bruno found us," she said quickly. "Lily is safe at the hospital." Grace's expression transformed from fear to desperate hope. "My baby? She's okay." "She's perfect," Nora assured her. "Bruno hasn't left her side." Grace sagged against the wall in relief. "Thank God. I've been hiding, watching. They found me somehow." "The pendant," James guessed. "Is it tracked?" Grace's eyes widened. "It could be. Harold gave it to me when Lily was born. I kept it because it belonged to his grandmother, and I thought—" She shook her head at her own naivety. "We need to leave now. Veronica never works alone." James led them quickly to his unmarked car, helping Grace into the back seat. As they pulled away, 2 more black SUVs turned into the motel parking lot. "They're here for me," Grace whispered, ducking down. "Harold wants Lily, but he wants me silenced more." "We have the evidence from your SD card," James assured her, "and your sister Rachel is meeting us at the hospital." Tears filled Grace's eyes. "Rachel's coming? I was so afraid to contact her directly, afraid they'd hurt her too." "Bruno led us to everything we needed," Nora said, turning to look at Grace. "He never gave up on either of you." When they reached the hospital, Rachel was already there, a slender woman with the same green eyes as her sister. The reunion between the siblings was tearful, Rachel holding Grace tightly, as if afraid she might disappear again. Dr. Chen led them to Lily's room, where Bruno's reaction to seeing Grace was immediate and joyful. The massive dog bounded to her, whining with happiness, practically dancing around her legs. Grace dropped to her knees, burying her face in his neck. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved her. Good boy, Bruno. The best boy." The rest of the day passed in a blur of statements, evidence processing, and preparations to move Grace, Lily, and Rachel to a safe location. James assured them that with the evidence from the SD card, they had enough to arrest Bennett on multiple charges, from financial crimes to conspiracy. As evening approached, Nora found herself alone with Grace in the hospital room, while James coordinated with the district attorney and Dr. Chen handled Lily's discharge paperwork. "I don't know how to thank you," Grace said softly, cradling Lily against her chest while Bruno sat protectively at her feet. "When I left her in that alley, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew Bruno would find someone to help." "How did you know he'd bring someone back?" Nora asked, curious about the dog's remarkable behavior. Grace smiled, stroking Bruno's head. "He's trained to seek assistance when given the command, find help. I used that command before I left him with Lily. What I didn't expect was that he'd adopt you in the process. I think it's more that I've been adopted by both of them," Nora admitted, watching as Lily's tiny hand curled around Bruno's fur. 3 months later, Nora stood in the bright living room of Rachel's Cedar Grove home, watching as Bruno played gently with Lily on a colorful blanket. The baby was growing stronger every day, her laughter filling the house as Bruno allowed her to grab his ears and tail with patient tolerance. Grace entered, looking transformed from the frightened woman they'd rescued. With Harold Bennett awaiting trial and most of his assets frozen, she and Lily were beginning to build a new life, protected by the best security system possible, a devoted Rottweiler with an uncanny ability to sense danger. The judge granted the permanent restraining order, she announced, and Bennett's former business partners are turning on him one by one. His empire is crumbling. That's fantastic news, Nora replied, genuinely happy for her friend. Her series of articles about Grace's escape and the corruption she'd exposed had won her a prestigious journalism award, but more importantly, had helped change policies at women's shelters across the state, improving security for vulnerable families. Detective Parker, James as she now called him, arrived shortly after, bringing case updates and a new toy for Lily. His professional interest in the case had evolved into something more personal, particularly where Nora was concerned. Their third official date was scheduled for that evening. Hayes' security has been completely restructured, he informed them as they sat down to coffee. Veronica Hayes is facing charges for her role in tracking Grace, but the company itself has new leadership committed to actual security, not harassment. Speaking of security, Grace said, exchanging glances with Rachel, we've been talking about Bruno. The Rottweiler looked up at the mention of his name, tail wagging. What about him? Nora asked. He belongs with you, Nora, Grace said simply. Rachel and I are moving to the West Coast next month for a fresh start, and Bruno has made his preference clear. It was true. Though the dog adored Lily and remained protective of Grace, he had formed an unbreakable bond with Nora. On the weekends when she visited, he would greet her with unbridled enthusiasm and mope visibly when she prepared to leave. Are you sure? Nora asked, emotion thick in her throat. Completely, Grace assured her. He chose you that night in the alley, just like he chose to stay with Lily when I had to leave. Bruno knows where he belongs. As if understanding the conversation, Bruno rose from his place beside Lily and padded over to Nora, resting his head on her lap with a contented sigh. Later that evening, walking through the park with James, Bruno trotting happily ahead, Nora reflected on the remarkable chain of events that had brought them all together. You know, James said, taking her hand, in all my years on the force, I've never seen anything quite like Bruno. He didn't just save Lily that night, he created a family. Nora nodded, watching as Bruno circled back to check on them before continuing his patrol of the path ahead. He taught me something important, she said. Sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting battles yourself, but in knowing when to seek help and who to trust. A lesson worth remembering, James agreed, squeezing her hand. As the sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, Bruno returned to walk beside them, his presence steady and reassuring. Once a guardian in the shadows, he had emerged into the light, bringing with him a bond of trust and love that none of them had expected, but all now treasured beyond measure. The abandoned baby who had nearly frozen in an alley was now thriving in a home filled with love. The desperate mother who had made an unthinkable choice was rebuilding her life free from fear. And the stray Rottweiler, who had shocked everyone with his devotion, had found his forever home, continuing his self-appointed mission to protect those he loved. Some would call it coincidence, how Bruno had brought together exactly the right people at precisely the right time. Nora knew better. She called it by its true name, loyalty, the kind that sees beyond circumstances to possibilities, beyond fear to hope, beyond darkness to dawn. And in the end, that loyalty had saved them all. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.